Good morning. Alright, so relating to other people, part 2. I realised that I talk forever about this subject. It's a very detailed subject. So just to follow on from what I was saying last time, the awakening process does affect relationships, and one of the big ways in which I found that it affects my relationships is I'm not as inclined to live in the past and future. So for people who like to like kind of strive towards things and plan things and have goals in the future, look forward to things a lot, I'm not so inclined to go with them on that mental journey. So that's definitely had an effect on my relationship. I would say that's one of the areas where, for me at least, there's been a negative or an impractical effect. Is this has had a very pronounced effect. Well, not very, but it's had a definite noticeable effect on my perception of time, and I've had to adjust to that quite a bit, because we live in time, we live planning. So I'm going to do this at this time, I'm going to do this at this day, this is what I'm doing here and now, so that this happens in the future, and so on. For me, that whole process became very scrambled, and it is integrating now, but it was scrambled, and I wasn't, my kind of memory wasn't great anyway, and you could imagine how annoying this is for my wife. You can imagine how annoying that can be when you've got things to plan, and I'm just not taking it in. I wasn't a great listener anyway. Like I mentioned about being married before, I mentioned that my wife has noticed this, and I wasn't super inclined to talk to her about it for a while. Although when it did come up, like I said, I did there was a period where I was very much wanting other people to understand the awakening, or like to I guess from a place of compassion, to try and share this with someone, for maybe to be a slightly less lonely path. And I mentioned that my wife said to me that she gets it and she can see a difference in me, but she's not keen to pursue a spiritual path in the same way that I seem to be, or whatever. She basically just said that after many discussions about this, many deep discussions about these things, she said she's basically happy living in the relative world, but it makes you realise that, and you'll hear people who have gone through the awakening process talk about this, that they see all they can see is enlightenment, all they can see is quote Buddha nature, all they can see is the universe doing its thing, and so there's no need to change anything, there's no need to change anyone, and any notion that my wife had to understand something or wasn't awake just came from my own selfish, limited personal point of view. It was just a judgment position. It was just me not seeing reality. So all that falls away, and then there's really no need to change anyone. And there's just an acceptance there, and you can just appreciate someone for what they are without needing to control or change them, or control or change their experience. And the most difficult, barriers, I would say, personal barriers, are those that involve intimate relationships. And I quickly came to the point where I wasn't triggered by anything, say at work or in daily life out and about or with other relationships. Wasn't triggered at all. Kind of had complete equanimity, but I was constantly, and I'm still, of course, constantly confronted with myself when it comes to family life, relationship with as a parent with my son, or my relationship with my wife, because it seems to be the last there's the most value in that relationship. There's the most of the attachment in there. There's the most of the attachment. There's the most of your dysfunction in your ego in there, and it's the clearest mirror. But this awakening process also allowed me to see the ways in which how do I put this? I don't know how to describe this. The ways in which it showed me things about my relationship, and it showed me things about my wife as a person, ways in which that she has her own understanding of what I talk about on this channel, and it's different from mine, but it's the same thing. And any attempt to control that is not appreciating the person, not seeing the person, not accepting and loving the person for who and what they are. But certainly I became a really annoying person, and there was a phase there, a period of there was a big change, and with all the positive changes, there were adjustments to make, and there still are. So this integration period seems to go on for a long time, probably a lifetime. I also noticed that yes, the memory and time goes, so any way in which we use that to relate to other people, there might be, again, some issues there. I also noticed that there's a kind of steadiness there, which seems to radiate out into your environment and into other people. Can perceive it, like I explained in the last video. But there's also a kind of indifference. There's you're not quick to judge, you're not quick to, get. Another thing as well is if people who derive a lot of their energy from drama, personal drama and stuff like that. I mean, I'll just talk for myself. I have there's no interest in that anymore. There's maybe a bit of entertainment there in it unfolding, and the emotions moving here and there, and the emotional kind of flavour of the emotional movement there. There's a bit of entertainment there and moving with it. But in terms of the personal drama, people who engage in that, and that's a big part of their identity, and they get a lot of energy from it, are probably going to find me boring now. And I would imagine with most people that inclination to engage in drama just goes away completely, I would assume. So there are a lot. People may find you boring, but at the same time they might be attracted to being in your company for a different reason. But it depends on how strong that person's story is, how strong that identification is, and how it's playing out. And some people might gravitate away from you, some people might naturally gravitate towards you. So it does naturally, your company changes. People may also perceive that indifference as initially as kind of agreeableness, or they could potentially see it as an opportunity to take advantage of the lack of obvious defensiveness, reactive defensiveness that appears. But at the same time, there's a strength of character that comes. You kind of see that the people-pleasing thing is another form of control, another form of strong identification, and it's not based on. It's based on wanting people to like you or trying to control people. It sounds weird when you put it like that, but the people-pleasing thing drops away as well, and there's a kind of strength of character that comes from that, that people can sense as well. So I guess it depends on how receptive someone else is to the social environment and those kind of energetic intuitions. But I don't know what I'm trying to describe here. How people try and engage with you changes, and that it just depends on the person, what that changes into. You realise that a lot of what you thought your endearing qualities were was just ego, was just an attempt to control, like the people-pleasing thing, or the, like I explained last time, you're less inclined to really go with the path of least resistance. Like I was like that before. It was kind of like social softness. I'm not going to say weakness of character, because that kind of paints the wrong picture. But kind of social agreeableness, wanting to avoid awkwardness, wanting to avoid confrontation to an extent, that goes away. So you develop an enormous tolerance for awkwardness and cringiness. And you realise that we were trying to avoid that feeling a lot. But when you develop like you develop kind of like a taste for the emotional flavours, and that awkwardness is one of them, the social flavours, the emotional movement, and you become kind of like a connoisseur of these movements, these flavours, and you're all, I'm not going to say you're drawn towards trying to experience them, but there's an enjoyment in whatever unfolds there, in terms of the flavour of it, and it kind of doesn't matter what that flavour is, they're all equally enjoyable. So if it happens to be, super awkwardness that you feel in the body, or anything, like even things that come from seemingly negative confrontation, or what you would have perceived as something you would have really wanted to avoid before awakening, you kind of just move with it and you go with it and you don't resist it. People notice that tendency as well, and I think sometimes they're not sure what to make of it, especially when it's in a stark contrast with the ways in which you behaved before. So what I'm trying to say is that, at least in my case, these changes happened fairly quickly, because I think my experiences before primed me for it, and the contrast in my personality was quite obvious, and people noticed. It's it's interesting. Also shows you how you're attached to people in terms of a story. It also shows you your interpretations of people and what they mean to you as a story, and how inaccurate that is, and how kind of see how that your own limited story-based perception of what you think other people are, someone else is so limited and doesn't do justice. It's almost like, before awakening, you're seeing yourself and everyone else, but you're seeing the personal self, the ego. You're seeing a projection of the ego, and you're responding to that projection. You're responding to this limited interpretation. After awakening, you're seeing yourself as everything, as the universe. It's like when you recognize yourself, when you discover yourself as the universe, as this non-dual being, you also recognize that in everyone else, and you recognize how false that limited interpretation of other people, or your mental idea of other people was. And I'm not saying the thought isn't there, the projection isn't there, the stories aren't there anymore. They go through a period of kind of disappearing, and then they become different, they change. You drop a lot of that perception in that story that's not needed. You see that there's not this, you have this idea of this person is this, and that's steady across time. They are this solid, unchanging person that has these characteristics based on what I've learned about them, and that's it. And you put them in a box and you limit them, and you say this person, this entity is this based on my judgment, and that's it. And we do this in the most complex form at times with our closer relationships. And that's just you're just not appreciating the person. It's not real. You can't react to what this interaction with this seeming person is in real time naturally. When you're operating from this limited fixed idea about this person that's not really based in reality, that's fabricated in our mind and then projected onto the image of this body, this personality. You're never really interacting authentically with people when you come from that place, and when you can, it's just a beautiful thing when you can interact authentically with people, and people pick up on that, and gradually all your relationships, all your interactions start to change. And you can also see it in people when they're receptive to this. You can almost see and feel the recognition there, and you share something even if they're not consciously aware of it. I mean, the consciously aware thing, say I interact with someone and there's a recognition there. Maybe I feel it and they feel it. But the conscious dialogue, the conscious narrative, that social thing is peripheral. In that moment, there's this energetic movement, and that becomes more of a valuable thing than the dialogue and the stories and what you can get from that person. Anyway, I need to go. That'll do for now. It's another quite long video, and I'll talk to you next time.